there is much more awareness now of the multitude of stakeholders beyond just customers and investors. We've seen the activism of employees. We've seen what's been happening politically. So I think there is more awareness, but I don't think people know where to go with it. I mean, we've talked already about data. I think people are swimming in data. So I don't think it's a lack of data. It's a lack of meaningful data and good advisors to help people know what to do with it. So even though people, C-suite CEOs know and probably say, I need good stakeholder engagement, my guess is they don't know how to do it. They certainly didn't learn it in business school. It only becomes pressing when there's a crisis and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that stakeholder. Now I got to put them on the map.
I'm Matt McDonald, president of Penta, and this is What's at Stake, a Penta podcast. We're excited to share this great conversation with Alex Jutkowitz, the Penta board chair, and Beth Comstock, board member at Penta and the former vice chair of General Electric. Beth was talking about some of the challenges CEOs and C-suite executives are facing with their various stakeholders in the current business climate. As we launch Penta, the world's first comprehensive solution for stakeholder engagement, this challenge represents a key problem we are looking to solve. Throughout the rest of the conversation with Beth and Alex, we expanded on the problem we're trying to address, as well as some of the opportunities we think lie ahead for companies and business leaders around the world. We also previewed some of Penta's capabilities and offerings around stakeholder understanding and engagement, which we'll talk about in more detail in upcoming episodes. It was great to have Alex and Beth on the show. Thanks for listening.
Beth, Alex, thank you both for joining us today. Beth, let me start with you. There's obviously been a lot of change and challenges that we've all dealt with over the past several years, certainly individually and then collectively as companies or advisors to companies. How would you describe what the view of the recent past has looked like from the C-suite and how leaders are dealing with the times that we live in?
Well, I mean, we've all lived through some incredible change. So for me, the C-suite has always been the change suite, the ones that hopefully have to have their attention focused on what's changing. I think over the past couple of years, it's been C-suite standing for chaos suite. There's just been so much chaos. Everything from where do employees work? Where are our customers? Can we get supply chain to them? What's going on? How do we communicate? So I think that's what I'm sensing is happening right now is just a lot of change and chaos and the need for good partners to help the C-suite navigate it.
Do you think that, I mean, it has, with the amount of stuff that's been going on, it feels like everybody must just feel back-footed the whole time and not really able to think actively, lean into their business, look around the corner. Do you think the consistency of change has even given people a breath to be able to consider like systemic change to how they're managing or how they're dealing with the chaos?
Well, I think one of the good things that came out of just the COVID challenge, that really a global challenge, was no longer could people say, well, let's just wait till things get back to the old way. They had to figure it out. They couldn't say, well, let's use that playbook we used on COVID 1995 because there was not one.
Yeah.
So I think they had to really figure it out. And I think that's long overdue in most organizations. Figure it out is not something they feel comfortable with. So I think you have lots of stories of, especially in the early days of the pandemic, what companies big and small were doing to just deal with what they have. I think you're seeing that in supply chain. Hopefully that continues to be the way we work and that people don't suddenly assume COVID over, political climate is crazy, let's just try to reach for some normalcy and go back to where we were. Hopefully you're not hearing any of that.
Yeah. I mean, on that point, obviously the focus of Penta and what we're talking about really puts stakeholders as, if not the center lens for every C-suite, it's certainly our center lens in how we're serving the C-suite. How has the role or the thinking around stakeholders evolved through this process in your mind?
Well, I would hope that it's evolved in a helpful way in the sense that in all this change and chaos, you didn't know what was going to happen in the next day or minute even, but you knew you had stakeholders, and let's start with customers and employees that you had the most engagement with, and probably you could say suppliers. So I think the conversation had to change immediately of what are you feeling? How can we help? So hopefully there has become a more dialogue, more engagement, in recognizing that we have to stay connected to our stakeholders if that's all we've got. However, I don't know that people have the fortitude to have the pulsing, the data gathering, the insights and management, which is why I'm so excited for what Penta's doing. So I think hopefully the need has arisen that people are spending more time with and knowing they need to spend more time with their stakeholders, but they need some help to figure out how do we do that successfully.
Alex, on that point, when we think about kind of the support and advisory side of the places like us that help companies counsel on stakeholder engagement, that sort of stuff, what do you see where do you see that market right now? Obviously, like, we have a vision of where we're going on that, but where are the strengths, where are the gaps in terms of the people who are trying to provide advice to business leaders?
To me, the gaps exist fundamentally where it's too fragmented from an advisory perspective. DC folks have DC perspectives, New York folks have New York perspectives, and it's strangely geographically fragmented, which impacts, I think, that the way that strategies are developed. We end up having a lot of different. We already have a fragmented stakeholder group that we're trying to navigate. And the different advisory groups are actually also fragmented that way. So we almost have a representative from each group at the table from an advisory perspective to represent each one of those groups, which is not particularly useful. And I think that what are the ways to create consensus and a consensus understanding, which is both consensus at a macro, but also an individualistic point of view of each stakeholder, is to be able to have those pulses and map it as Beth just referenced, and to be able to act upon it broadly rather than to just think in the silos. So instead of aggregating and thinking about people together, we've just created a series of advisors that are just as fragmented as the stakeholder groups.
Yeah, we're pulling in-house within the companies the same tensions, agendas, and different perspectives that exist in the stakeholder world in the advice side of it. And Beth, to your point, without harder data around some of these perspectives, is that you're just kind of left to suss it out on a relative basis of which voice might be the loudest, or which, to your point, Alex, which advisor in the room makes the most compelling argument, or what have you. Beth, how would you say business leaders are feeling about the new stakeholder engagement? It depends on the moment, but it definitely feels like a lot to kind of pile onto people's existing jobs. And I don't think anyone is out there, crying in their milk for the poor CEOs of the world. But these jobs are not easy these days.
Right. These jobs are not easy. And I think any great CEO or C-suite person, it starts with your customer. I love that Peter Drucker quote from back in the 50s, without a customer, there is no business. I mean, it just starts with that basic. And I was often shocked at how even that kind of basic engagement, what do our customers really want? And there is much more awareness now of the multitude of stakeholders beyond just customers and investors. We've seen the activism of employees. We've seen what's been happening politically. So I think there is more awareness, but I don't think people know where to go with it. I mean, we've talked already about data. I think people are swimming in data. So I don't think it's a lack of data. It's a lack of meaningful data and good advisors to help people know what to do with it. Yeah. So even though people, C-suite CEOs know and probably say, I need good stakeholder engagement, my guess is they don't know how to do it. They certainly didn't learn it in business school. It only becomes pressing when there's a crisis and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that stakeholder. Now I got to put them on the map.
Yeah, the crisis is the worst time to solve your stakeholder problems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It becomes the only time that people solve their stakeholder problems.
Yeah. Well, and on some level, I mean, Beth, to your earlier point on the pandemic is that hopefully this isn't for naught, and that some of the habits and rethinking of ways that we work will stick around and we'll be better for it,
Hopefully. And I think, again, that's a great opportunity for Penta and the Penta partners, because people are hungry for, okay, give me some meaningful data, give me some strategic advice. I do think there's a unique moment in time, again, before some troglodytes come in and say, let's go back to the way we used to be, to get a foothold and say, here, let's go. We've got the answer. So in many ways, you're primed and ready to go.
Yeah. I love the Drucker quote, the purpose of a business is to create a customer. There's a certain elegance to that a lot flows from. Alex, I know that you've touched on the BRT statement on purpose of a corporation in the past. I mean, how do we think about the environment changing for business in terms of the expectations, what they're signing up for, all of that stuff?
Well, it is more complex, and businesses are signing up for not only a responsibility for their stakeholders and for their customers, but a social compact, if you will, with everyone, and a social compact that essentially was always we always relied upon government to meet the social compact, that we were going to have a sort of civil society and they were going to drive that. And now it's incumbent upon business to sign on to that and be part of civil society, not just be a good participant and a good little soldier in it, but in fact be driving and leading an agenda on it oftentimes.
I think a lot of the times I think that people, reconcile the shareholder versus stakeholder lenses on this stuff through the lens of time, of just like, look, if the time horizon is long enough, you have to have a stakeholder lens on this stuff, or the shareholder lens goes to zero, or however you want to think about it. But it's an interesting, it's been a debate. I mean, it's an interesting lens to look at the world through. Do you guys feel like business leaders have really turned the page on this and are really thinking in a different lens, or is it just kind of a function of the times? Where are we in the journey of that discussion, do you think?
So to me, we're on a continuum. I think some business leaders have made it part and parcel of who they are and whom their corporations, and as a hallmark of their leadership. I think some are on that journey, and I think some don't really engage in it at all. The truth is, I don't hear anybody. Look, nobody rebuts it. They either sit on their hands and let things wither on the vine, or they engage. Why did Black Lives Matter and those types of rips in civil society generate and become much larger and much more profound movements of change, while voting rights, which is also a pretty interesting and important aspect of civil society, caused a ripple with a couple of things in Georgia, and then kind of really didn't go very far and didn't get a lot of consensus around from the private sector. I think not just what corporates and how they're reacting is important, but also to understand what are the different factors that actually make people rise to do something and take action, and what isn't that, and how to be able to recognize it. And that goes back to a little bit better critical thinking, instead of always sort of having to react to the moment and think about it. And again, we're very geographically divided, both in the United States and everywhere else in the world. We're divided by what kind of area we live in, whether that's urban or suburban or rural. And I think trying to unpack all of that has put people in a position not to sort of have competing points of view, but to have points of view that are on a continuum, and frankly, just kind of being unsure of what to do most of the time. And that's, I think, the greatest challenge, is the uncertainty around when to lean in and when not to.
Yeah, I think, Alex, the uncertainty point is such a good one. And there's so many examples that people can point to, even if it's not, it brings up that word crisis again. And even if it's not a crisis for their immediate business, they're seeing some other company have a crisis or some global world crisis. We still have some people questioning whether environmental issues are even necessary, but I think most businesses have made up their minds on that. And all you have to do is go outside the door in any given day, in any city, any location in the world, and you're reminded. I think it's the same thing for diversity and inclusion. Most companies now, people can talk all they want to in the media about whether it's, what the issues are, but a lot of companies made up their mind on that. They know what they need to do. They've heard from their employees. And so I think the crises that are just there's just such transparency and the world's moving so fast. CEOs are reading who knows even what media they're reading anymore. It would be really interesting. I'd love for Penta to do a survey to just tell us what the media diet is of C-suite these days. I don't even know. It would be really interesting where people are getting their news, but I guarantee you they're not just thinking about their industry or their specific company. They can't.
If they answer the question the way most people answer the question, they would say, "I get it from my phone," which on one level is like doesn't answer the question and also answers the question like in volumes.
Well, then they're not reading, because it's pretty hard to read the phones unless you've got your reading glasses nearby.
We have been talking about the problems, challenges, and crises of the world for a while. Let's turn to the solution. Today is Penta Day 1. You both serve on the board of Penta. You've been central in pulling together the different capabilities that we have, laying the groundwork for this new firm, this stakeholder-centric firm. Alex, I'll start with you. How do you see the vision for what we have put together and what the opportunity is for this to become?
Yeah, I think the opportunity is to coalesce and bring together the various streams of stakeholder thinking and stakeholder activism in one place, to be able to look at it thoughtfully, come with a keen eye towards how to not only just understand it, but how to manage it, how to optimize it, and how to use it, how to harness all of that as a force for good for the corporate clients that we have.
Beth, when you think about, when I think about consulting and advisory in general, like I often think that these firms should come with an instruction manual for the users, kind of like a very transparent, what are we best at? How should you use us most effectively? It's not really the norm in the industry, but I feel like it would be good if someone had a decoder ring for these types of things. But you've been inside the C-suite, and you've been along on the journey as we've developed Penta. What would be your counsel to our clients and our future clients on that question of what we can bring to the table and how they should think about these capabilities?
Well, first of all, Matt, I love your idea of a decoder ring and a user's manual. I hope you guys follow up with that. You all follow up with that. That would be that. I've never heard any advisor say that. Often a question I would ask advisors or potential advisors is, at what point do people come, what problems do people come to you with, or what questions do they come to you with trying to answer? Because sometimes you don't know where to start. So I think there might actually be an interesting diagnostic you could create where you're asking a series of questions that then get you into some of that. So I highly endorse that as a way to go forward. But you reminded me of, I always felt, having worked in marketing and advertising, one of the things I learned from the advertising world was the quality of work depends on how good your creative brief is. And if you have a stinky brief, you're going to have stinky creative. And so I think the real opportunity for strategy partners and advisors is to really work with the client to develop the brief and spend a lot of time on what problem are we trying to solve. Again, to me, one of those essential, to me, that's a marketer's best question. We'll forget Peter Drucker. To me, this is a marketer's best question. what problem are we trying to solve? And often your potential client or your client doesn't even know, right? They know what they're being told to produce. They know what the CEO says or what maybe the board has told them. And they perhaps need somebody to help them distill the question even so that the company knows what question to ask. And then the data flows from there. So that's just what you made me think about as what I always found the real opportunity. And it was, the best strategic advisors know you better than you know yourself.
Yeah. I love that the problem definition side of it is sometimes we'll talk about avoiding fun with numbers, right? Is really trying when you have a lot of data, and there's, as you said, I think there is a lot of data in the world today, is that it becomes really important to be hypothesis driven in how you approach the data and then use that to inform or test the strategy. Because if you don't have that you're trying to solve against, you can get into a fun with numbers zone where you're making lots of charts. And I will say that, where the stakeholder space broadly defined can be a very kind of soft skills, messaging oriented, how do people feel kind of zone that isn't always, as much as like there is a demand for metrics and accountability, it isn't always the seat at the table that has data analytics at the heart of the insights, in the heart of the action that they're trying to drive. I mean, we've talked a little bit about the importance of the combination of that, but that is central to what we're trying to do at Penta, is to have data that informs and provides insight for what clients are trying to wrestle with.
Yeah, I think there's a significant difference between academic research, research for ourselves, and actionable research. And there's a paucity of actionable research and insights in the world. There's no paucity of data and information.
Yeah, I think as I think about that stuff, I often, the things that pop to mind with clients is I have a lot of clients where it was just one chart that either changed their mind about an approach to something, or that was the chart that they would track over years to understand their progress against an issue. It's not it's not like a 200-page deck most of the time. It's that one insight that can really be a decisive factor in decision making.
I think the ability to tell these stories simply and get to the crux of it. I was always big on data visualization as a skill to invest in, because exactly that, the people are just inundated with too much data, and after a while they don't know, why is this more important than that? And wait a minute, isn't this the same question? And then too much language, too many words all the time, their eyes glaze over. So you do have to hit that balance.
Let's talk a little bit about the future and what's ahead. Obviously, kind of today is the big announcement and the day one for Penta and the launch. But and we obviously have this is a combination of firms, so there's a lot of great clients that we're already working with that we're going to be talking to about these capabilities. But how do you both think about the future and what's ahead for the firm, where Penta fits into the space, what the kind of opportunities look like around the corner?
I think Penta fits into the space of breaking through by being able to pull all of these disparate data sets and be predictive. I think unfortunately, the world of stakeholder management and corporate advisory is a lot of after the fact and a lot of postmortem. And I think we have to move into an era of predictive and having some hypotheses, being able to track them going forward, but look back in time and see if there's the warning signals, early signals that we could perhaps utilize to inform us before something happens. It's not good enough. I think it's funny that everybody talks about crisis, but crisis is by definition almost always after the fact. And I think the Penta is going to be about before it happens rather than after it happens.
Yeah, I think that's so well said, Alex. I think that's just the rallying cry. It is the predictive nature, the fact that Penta has combined the various capabilities in companies, invested not just in data, but the AI capabilities, the creative capabilities to be able to tell the stories once you figure out what the key issues and messages are. So I'm not aware that there's any other firm that has combined the pieces the way Penta has. So I think you're definitely out in front. I do think the time is now. But I think that I just want to go back and reiterate what Alex has said and what we've mentioned before, this notion of crisis firms, that you're almost like creating this new space. You're like pre-crisis, or you're not crisis prevention, but you're kind of pre-crisis, because it's going to happen.
We're like Minority Report. We're pre-crime. We're pre-crisis. Pre-crisis. We don't want to actually get to the point where there's the crisis. We want to avoid that. Penta are not going to be experts in crisis. They're going to be experts in avoiding a crisis.
Or getting, you're about resiliency. That's one of the things you're offering people, is helping them think ahead and be ready, so that when these issues arise, and they will, that people they have their resources. I mean, one of the things that really attracted me to get to know what all your leadership team and the capabilities you're building is, I used to fantasize when I had my C-suite roles that I had a big dashboard and I could just toggle and every day check in on where are the various stakeholders looking and where are the things we need to get ahead of. Because to Alex's point, we always felt like we were looking in the rearview mirror, and it was so frustrating.
Well, Beth, back to the points that you were making at the beginning, is that the degree to which we're living through this era of chaos and continual crisis, I think, has everyone's attention. That this isn't kind of from a C-suite perspective, this isn't like a once in a decade problem where I'll call in whoever on cleanup duty type of thing. It's just, these are ongoing issues on a regular basis, whether it is, social unrest or the pandemic or supply chain or inflation, or, take your pick. There's kind of something new all the time. And I think that the ability to react to these things prospectively, to be prepared for these things, to be nimble in the moment, these are the types of skills that are going to be determinant of the companies that are going to come out of all of this flourishing and stronger, are the ones that are going to flail around.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges for leadership today, whether it's in government, really any institution, is the need to become just much more they're emergent leaders. They have to be ready to deal with whatever emerges. And it's a different kind of leadership, and it requires different kinds of insights and partners who know how to do it. You can't just have we all know big firms that come in and just leave you with a bunch of data and say, here's our recommendation, see ya. That's not going to work anymore. And so that ability to just have the continual development and partnership, I think, is what is different now. And I hope people know they need that. I think with a few good case studies that you already have, you'll be able to prove that even more.
Yeah. And to that point, it's interesting where I think, for this type of discipline and this type of work, I do think it helps to have an outside perspective that can look at the situation at some remove and know the different pressure points and forces that are facing clients, and be able to kind of work with them across that stuff. Because when you're in it, it can be really, really tough.
Exactly. Yeah, that's such a great point. And I also think the other thing that people need, that teams and companies need, that Penta can provide, is a rigor and a discipline. Strategy and data analytics, they go together. They often don't seem like they would, but they do. And so the more rigor you can bring and the discipline, you're getting people into a routine of having the hypothesis, knowing the questions, getting used to seeing the data and understanding what to do as they go along. And so I think that discipline piece is also something important.
And it's a discipline that's probably overdue in the space generally. Any final thoughts?
I think it's just an exciting time for everyone, for the team here. Again, what problem are you trying to solve? Stakeholder engagement. The number of stakeholders companies are having to think about has probably never been larger. and their ability to understand what to do has there's a gap. And so the challenge for the Penta team is to connect that gap and be partners to ongoing, not just once and done. And I think that'll be very exciting to watch.
Beth, Alex, thank you both for your time today. We're really excited to get started.
Thank you, Matt. And we're excited, and we're excited for the whole team to really take us on this journey and see what you're able to do.